Parenting isn't a magical journey. It's a relentless hostage situation managed by sleep-deprived amateurs making it up as they go. From catastrophic DIY costumes to traumatizing biological explanations, we've gathered the absolute dumbest parenting decisions ever made on American soil. No experts here, just pure, unfiltered, highly embarrassing domestic chaos. 1. Explaining the birds and the bees is a universal nightmare, but one dad thought he was an absolute genius by using the family's 2 pet hamsters to soften the biological blow. Bad call. He delivered a wildly confusing, completely inaccurate metaphor about furry rodents. His son just sat there staring blankly, trying to process this absolute garbage explanation of human reproduction. Finally, the kid looked up with pure, unadulterated curiosity and asked if he needed to buy a tiny plastic exercise wheel to get a baby brother. Honestly, that kid is asking the real logistical questions. 2. School picture day is stressful enough without accidentally turning your own flesh and blood into a radioactive citrus fruit. A well-meaning mother decided to mix a few trendy glow drops into her son's morning moisturizer, hoping for a healthy, vibrant complexion. She catastrophically botched the ratio, turning that harmless cream into industrial-strength self-tanner. By the time the kid hit homeroom, he was radiating a cheerful neon orange aura. Luckily, the school photographer was an absolute legend who quietly adjusted the camera's white balance, magically making the entire rest of the class look incredibly pale, just to save one glowing boy. 3. Desperation makes people do incredibly stupid things, especially during an Arizona heatwave. One father was determined to beat the blazing temperatures by inflating a massive kiddie pool. The only problem was his profound inability to judge spatial volume. The only flat surface large enough to hold this plastic monstrosity was the living room floor. Instead of stopping, he just grabbed the garden hose. An hour later, the entire family was casually floating on foam noodles in their own private, deeply destructive indoor water park, watching television while the carpet suffered water damage of biblical proportions. 4. You have to respect the chaotic DIY energy of Halloween, but sometimes ambition completely outpaces talent. A dad spent an entire Saturday engineering a masterpiece robot costume out of premium cardboard and enough shiny aluminum foil to intercept a satellite signal. Visually, it was a flawless 10 out of 10. Mechanically, it was a complete disaster. In his creative frenzy, this amateur engineer completely forgot to build in any knee joints. His poor kid was trapped in a rigid silver tube, forcing the dad to haul his son from door to door like a very disgruntled, shiny kitchen appliance. 5. Applying real-world architectural principles to a video game is a fantastic way to look like a total boomer to your kids. Trying to bond, a father decided to help his son build a house in Minecraft. He treated it like a high-end luxury project, spending a solid hour crafting a gorgeous, open-concept floor plan with massive floor-to-ceiling windows and lovely natural light. Unfortunately, his son had to brutally inform him that a digital house without solid walls is just an expensive, scenic death trap. By sunset, their virtual living room was completely overrun by exploding green monsters admiring the view. 6. Shielding your children from the brutal reality of the food chain usually ends in psychological horror. When asked where meat comes from, one dad totally chickened out. He claimed farm animals just live incredibly happy lives and then take a very long, deep sleep before they become dinner. It sounded beautiful and peaceful. That is, until the next afternoon. The dad walked into the living room and caught his son gently stroking the family cat, softly whispering into its ear that it was time to take a long, deep sleep because the fridge was running desperately low on ham. 7. Never send a colorblind man to the hardware store for interior decor unless you actively want to cause a domestic crisis. A daughter specifically requested her bedroom be painted a soft, delicate shade called Fairy Princess Pink. Her dad marched into the store, completely bypassed the pastel swatches, and confidently grabbed the can right next to it. He ended up painting her entire room with a violently aggressive, neon shade literally called Rave Explosion. The walls are now so hostile they practically hum in the dark, and the neighbors have started referring to their house as a nightclub. 8. Throwing away the instruction manual is the ultimate display of toxic dad pride, especially when Swedish flat-pack furniture is involved. After staring at incomprehensible diagrams for an hour, a father tossed the papers into the trash and loudly declared that real men build by instinct. Well, his instinct was terribly flawed. What they ended up constructing wasn't a functional bookshelf, but a structurally terrified, leaning tower of particle board that looked ready to collapse from a strong breeze. They finally realized their architectural nightmare could only safely support the weight of a single, highly optimistic paperback novel. 9. If you do not speak with absolute legal precision around children, they will weaponize your vocabulary against you. A mother was teaching her little girl how to bake a cake and casually read the recipe aloud, instructing her to beat 2 eggs separately. She turned her back for exactly 30 seconds. When she looked back, her daughter had carried 2 raw eggs into completely different corners of the kitchen and was standing there, aggressively screaming at them. The kid proudly explained she was beating them with her words to break their spirit before baking. 10. Voice-to-text technology has single-handedly destroyed more peaceful afternoons than actual arguments. A dad was watching from the sidelines of a chaotic youth soccer game and wanted to send his wife a quick, proud update. He dictated a message saying their kid just made a great goal. However, his phone decided to rewrite history and sent a text declaring that their son had made a gray goat. The mother immediately called him in a state of absolute panic, demanding to know why he would allow their child to acquire unregulated livestock in the middle of a sporting event. 11. Allowing a child to interpret a recipe without direct supervision is basically an act of culinary terrorism. A distracted father was supposedly overseeing dinner prep when the spaghetti instructions called for a single clove of garlic. His daughter, having never actually dismantled raw garlic before, logically assumed a clove meant the entire massive, paper-covered bulb. She pulverized the whole thing into the sauce. The resulting dinner was so violently aggressive that eating it felt like a biological attack. The entire family was sweating pure garlic for a week, permanently warding off any vampires in the tri-state area. 12. Handing a 5-year-old an expensive makeup palette before a fancy dinner requires a level of reckless confidence I simply do not possess. A Colorado mother sat down, expecting a slightly crooked lipstick application as a cute bonding moment. What she actually received was a terrifying, thick blue eyeshadow unibrow and 2 intensely glittered, asymmetrical red cheeks. She looked less like a glamorous wife and more like an extra from a horrific carnival movie. When she finally revealed her face, her husband just slowly took a sip of water and asked if her new circus career was paying a decent wage. 13. Texting the school office while in a frantic morning rush is basically playing Russian roulette with your social reputation. A frantic mom grabbed her phone to alert the teacher that her kid was staying home sick. She used voice-to-text to inform them that little Leo had a terrible case of the runs. Autocorrect, however, felt that was too vulgar and politely changed it to a terrible case of the nuns. Within 10 minutes, she received a deeply concerned phone call from the school's head chaplain, who wanted to know exactly how many rogue sisters were currently occupying her bathroom. 14. When a toddler corners you with a complex science question, the natural parental instinct is to just confidently lie directly to their face. Asked why the sky is blue, a panicked father claimed the ocean acts like a giant mirror and reflects its color upwards. A solid, entirely fake answer. Unfortunately, children weaponize bad information. The very next day, his son stood up in front of his entire science class and proudly explained that cloudy days only happen because the ocean is feeling socially anxious and needs a little privacy from the sky. The teacher just stared in defeat. 15. The bedtime routine requires the delicate precision of a bomb squad, and this dad completely snipped the wrong wire. After reading the story and tucking his kid in, he reached into the dark to turn on the white noise machine for some gentle, relaxing ocean waves. Unfortunately, his thumb slipped on the audio menu. He quietly tiptoed out of the bedroom, completely unaware that he had just left his precious child trying to drift off to sleep, to the incredibly aggressive, blaring sounds of a 6-lane highway traffic jam, complete with honking semi-trucks. 16. Attempting to demonstrate advanced physics to a child is just begging for expensive property damage. a highly motivated mom decided to teach her kids about gravity and air resistance by dropping an apple and a feather from the front porch. The kids looked completely unimpressed by this low-stakes experiment. So, her adventurous son took matters into his own hands. He decided to really test the structural integrity of gravity by grabbing his father's only set of car keys and dropping them directly through the metal grates of a deep, dark neighborhood storm drain. Science is expensive. 17. Trying to hack meal prep by ignoring the basic laws of thermodynamics is a bold and incredibly stupid choice. To save time, a dad attempted to boil an entire week's worth of dry spaghetti inside a single, standard-sized pot. The ungodly volume of pasta rapidly absorbed every drop of moisture, expanding and fusing together into a terrifying, immovable starch boulder. It was completely stuck. They literally had to take a serrated bread knife and carve the food out of the metal pot like it was a wedding cake. For 5 straight days, this family ate triangular spaghetti slices. 18. Working from home means your professional dignity is constantly held hostage by unhinged tiny humans. A mother was right in the middle of a high-stakes corporate Zoom call, praying her 6-year-old would stay quiet. Suddenly, a figure appeared in her background video. Her child had fully suited up in complete scuba diving gear, including giant rubber flippers and a face mask with a snorkel. Without making a single sound, the kid began aggressively watering the indoor houseplants. Her manager literally stopped the presentation just to ask if the accounting department should be preparing for a catastrophic flood. 19. Forgetting to play the tooth fairy requires some aggressive, next-level morning-after forgery. A father woke up, realized his massive mistake, and panic-shoved a crisp $5 bill under his kid's pillow. To cover his tracks, he scribbled a frantic apology note claiming the delay was due to heavy ferry traffic over the city. It was a solid excuse, except his little girl took one look at the messy handwriting, compared it to her math homework, and immediately called him out. She pointed right at his face and officially labeled him a very suspicious, lying elf. 20. Democracy is a beautiful concept until you let a 6-year-old name the family dog and ruin your public image. A suburban mom thought it would be a magical bonding moment to let her daughter officially name their majestic new golden retriever puppy. The child looked at this beautiful, purebred creature and formally christened him Sir Farts-a-Lot. Now, this poor mother has the daily humiliation of standing in a crowded, upscale dog park, screaming for a gassy medieval knight to please stop eating random garbage off the grass, while the other dog owners judge her in silence. 21. Asking a toddler for help with plumbing is a fantastic way to lose your absolute mind. A dad was crammed under the dark kitchen sink, wrestling with a leaky pipe, and yelled out for his 5-year-old daughter to please pass him the wrench. He reached his hand out blindly, expecting cold metal. A few seconds later, she placed something soft and slightly bruised into his palm. It was a banana. When he crawled out, furious and dripping wet, she proudly smiled and pointed out that it was yellow, exactly like his favorite tool. You cannot argue with that logic. 22. The difference between a teaspoon and a tablespoon is the difference between a nice dessert and a hostile biological attack. A dad let his young daughter take charge of a homemade applesauce recipe that clearly called for a single teaspoon of cinnamon. She grabbed the tablespoon measuring cup instead and essentially dumped a sandbox worth of dry spice into the boiling pot. The mixture instantly mutated into a dark, gritty, cinnamon-flavored industrial cement. At dinner, the entire family was politely coughing out brown clouds, chugging tap water, and nervously agreeing that the dessert was incredibly festive. 23. Total silence from the back seat of a moving minivan is never a sign of peace. It is the sound of an active crime scene. During a brutal, endless road trip, a mother and father blissfully assumed their chaotic toddler had finally fallen asleep. When they pulled over to check the mirror, they found a waking nightmare. The kid had meticulously peeled an old brown banana and used it as thick paint to create a massive sticky mural across the entire interior window. It smelled like a tropical garbage dump inside that vehicle for the next 4 years. 24. Ordering custom holiday apparel from a sketchy internet ad is a massive gamble that will eventually ruin your Christmas. A dad wanted to win the annual holiday card photo, so he proudly ordered matching festive sweaters for the entire family. He briefly glanced at the digital proof and hit purchase. It wasn't until 200 physical cards had already been mailed out to friends and relatives that his cousin called with a crucial question. The cousin wanted to know why, right across their chests in elegant cursive font, the family was enthusiastically demanding that everyone marry Chrysler. 25. Gamifying household chores is a brilliant psychological trick until your kid establishes a brutal dictatorship. A desperate father rebranded the horrible job of cleaning the bathroom as being the brave captain of the SS toilet. He even bought a little white sailor hat to seal the deal. The boy embraced his new naval rank with terrifying enthusiasm. In fact, he took his captaincy so seriously that he barricaded the bathroom door, flat out refusing to let his own parents use the facilities because they lacked the proper security clearance to board his pristine ceramic vessel. 26. Handing walkie-talkies to bored children in an enclosed vehicle is a rookie mistake that will destroy your ego. A nostalgic dad handed a radio to his kids in the back row, keeping the other one up front for fun communication during a road trip. 10 minutes into the drive, his wife aggressively confiscated the devices. The children had turned the back seat into a live broadcasting booth, providing a relentless, highly critical, play-by-play audio commentary of their father's absolutely garbage-singing voice. The kid literally called his dad's high notes a crime against humanity over the open frequency. 27. There is a massive, impenetrable wall between teenage slang and middle-aged mothers that should never be breached under any circumstances. A mom thought she was being highly relatable when she casually leaned on the doorframe and asked her 16-year-old son what his squad was planning for the weekend. The boy completely froze. He stared at her with dead, empty eyes for a full 10 seconds as the cringe paralyzed his nervous system. Finally, with the somber sincerity of a hostage negotiator, he begged her to never let that word leave her mouth again, for the safety of everyone involved. 28. Building a backyard treehouse sounds like a wholesome American dream until you accidentally violate the territorial claims of local wildlife. A family spent a grueling weekend constructing a massive, multi-level wooden fort. It was an amateur carpentry masterpiece. The fatal flaw? They built it inside the exact oak tree that the neighborhood squirrel mafia had claimed as their sacred ancestral homeland. The treehouse is now completely abandoned by the humans. The family is locked in a bitter, ongoing turf war with a highly organized militia of angry rodents who aggressively launch heavy acorns at anyone approaching the ladder. 29. Trying to teach children about the brutal reality of taxes is a bold parenting move that usually ends in tears. A dad in Texas thought he was an economic genius when he casually leaned over and ate exactly 30% of his daughter's massive chocolate ice cream cone. He smugly explained that this is how the government works. His daughter didn't cry. Instead, she waited until he fell asleep, permanently hid the television remote, and left a note on his chair stating his entertainment assets had been seized for an unannounced audit. She basically outsmarted the IRS. 30. Science fair projects are supposed to be mildly educational, not classified explosive ordnance. A kid built a classic boring papier-mâché volcano, but his dad stepped in, operating under the dangerous philosophy that bigger is always better. He secretly tripled the recommended payload of baking soda and industrial white vinegar. When the kid triggered the reaction, it didn't just bubble pleasantly. The chemical pressure literally launched the entire painted mountain 3 feet straight up into the air, violently detonating against the kitchen ceiling. The family spent the rest of the weekend scraping acidic, gray paste off the light fixtures. 31. Laundry is a basic adult survival skill that an alarming number of grown men still completely fail at. A father wanted to be a hero and aggressively stuffed a massive load of bright whites into the washing machine. He completely failed to spot the single, brand new, highly pigmented red sock lurking in the pile like a fabric assassin. The machine didn't clean their clothes. It genetically mutated them. The entire family was suddenly forced to wear a brand new wardrobe in 50 shades of sad, washed-out pink. The dad proudly defends the disaster, calling it his bold spring collection. 32. The multi-million-dollar baby-proofing industry is mostly designed to outsmart exhausted adults. A highly motivated father spent an entire Sunday installing state-of-the-art magnetic safety locks on every single kitchen cabinet to protect his toddler. It was a flawless security system. Unfortunately, he immediately lost the singular, proprietary magnetic key required to open them. The child was perfectly safe, but the adult humans had effectively locked themselves out of their own plates and forks. They had to eat expensive takeout for 3 straight days just to survive. 33. Parental pride is a dangerous thing, especially when it forces you to serve toxic baked goods to your own family. A distracted mom accidentally swapped a massive cup of salt for sugar while baking a birthday cake. When she realized the error, she absolutely refused to admit defeat and served the poisonous sponge anyway. Her 8-year-old son took one massive bite, stopped chewing, and just stared blankly at the wall. He slowly put his plastic fork down, looked his mother dead in the eyes, and accurately stated that the cake tasted like the ocean was personally angry at him. 34. Armed with cheap plastic clippers and the dangerous arrogance of a YouTube tutorial, one dad decided to play neighborhood barber. He promised his son a trendy fade, slapped the guard on, pressed hard, and instantly carved a gleaming bald landing strip straight up the back of the kid's skull. It was a flawless, catastrophic reverse mohawk. The dad panicked, ready to shave the whole head to hide the evidence. But the real twist? The kid looked in the mirror, thought he looked like an absolute post-apocalyptic warlord, and aggressively refused to let his father fix the damage. 35. Trying to capture the perfect, majestic family vacation photo almost always ends in a chaotic disaster. A dad carefully balanced his expensive camera on a rock at the Grand Canyon, hit the 10-second timer, and frantically sprinted back to pose with his wife and son. At the exact millisecond the camera flashed, a massive, aggressive raven swooped out of the sky and violently snatched the ham sandwich straight out of the terrified child's hand. The final printed photograph is an absolute Renaissance painting of human shock, complete parental failure, and sheer unapologetic avian triumph. 36. Teaching the brutal realities of capitalism to a second grader is tough when their primary customer base is highly corrupt. A couple gave their young son a box of fundraising candy bars, hoping to teach him about profit margins and hard work. He came back 10 minutes later with an empty box, claiming a complete retail victory. It turned out he had aggressively offloaded the entire inventory to his grandmother. Her payment? A single, legally unbinding, scribbled IOU napkin, granting him unlimited future access to chocolate chip cookies. That kid basically invented family embezzlement. 37. Trying to teach a kid how to tie their shoes using the classic bunny ears method is an exercise in pure misery. One mom spent 30 sweaty minutes looping laces, only to watch her son dissolve into a puddle of absolute rage. The boy stormed off to his bedroom in defeat. An hour later, he confidently marched back into the kitchen, having completely bypassed the need for fine motor skills. He had solved the engineering problem by using half a roll of industrial silver duct tape to permanently fuse his sneakers to his ankles. You have to respect the innovation. 38. Using overly simplified metaphors to explain modern technology to a child will inevitably result in deep psychological trauma. A mother tried to explain the concept of hard drives by telling her daughter that an iPad is just a little electronic brain that remembers everything you do. Fast forward to midnight, and the kid is sobbing hysterically in her bed. When the confused mom asked what was wrong, the little girl confessed she was terrified that the tablet sitting in the living room was currently having horrific nightmares about all the violent digital bad guys from her video games. 39. Kids have a terrifying ability to take biological facts and apply them with ruthless, literal precision. A father thought he was delivering a fun nature lesson when he explained that wild bears eat a lot of food and then take a massive, months-long nap all winter. The next morning, the dad was looking for a pair of socks and opened a dresser drawer. He found that his daughter had aggressively crammed every single one of her stuffed teddy bears into the dark space, complete with a tiny, heavily misspelled "Do Not Disturb" sign taped to the wood to protect their slumber. 40. Trying to be the legendary cool dad is the absolute fastest way to completely bankrupt yourself. After a chaotic field trip, a father took his son's entire class of 20 feral 7-year-olds to a local ice cream parlor. Riding a wave of pure, foolish adrenaline, he looked the cashier in the eye and yelled that the kids could order whatever they wanted, entirely on his dime. He instantly learned a devastating financial lesson. He severely underestimated the destructive, sugary ambition of 20 children who had just discovered what a triple-scoop waffle cone with extra gummy worms actually costs. 41. Modern technology has turned regular baby monitors into psychological weapons. A mom purchased a high-end, Wi-Fi-enabled nursery camera with a two-way intercom to gently soothe her toddler. Her husband, however, realized he could access the microphone from his phone at work. Trying to prank his wife, he randomly whispered in a deep, raspy voice that he was the ghost of the laundry basket. He completely missed his wife, but absolutely terrified the teenage babysitter, who immediately sprinted out the front door, leaving the house completely unguarded. Technology is a mistake. 42. Using terrible gardening metaphors to explain human reproduction is a recipe for absolute madness. A mother didn't want to explain actual biology, so she told her daughter that making a baby is just like planting a seed in the dirt and watching it magically grow. 2 days later, the mother got a bizarre, highly concerning phone call from the elementary school. Her daughter had been caught violently burying her plastic Ken doll in the playground sandbox, loudly informing the other children that she was expecting a tiny, highly muscular plastic son by late spring. 43. Family board games are specifically designed to start intense, highly personal psychological warfare. During a highly competitive match of Guess Who, a son looked at his opponent and asked if the mystery person had a mustache. The mom was holding the card for a female character who unfortunately featured some very aggressive upper lip shading. Panicking under pressure, the mom hesitated and mumbled that she sort of had one. That single, fatal hesitation completely derailed the game, plunging the entire family into a fierce 20-minute screaming match regarding the technical medical definition of female facial hair. 44. Impatience in the kitchen usually leads to you accidentally creating abstract modern art on your own walls. A hungry parent was desperately trying to cool down a massive steaming pot of freshly boiled spaghetti so the kids would stop whining. Instead of just waiting 5 minutes, they decided to place a high-powered industrial box fan directly on the counter, aiming it right at the pasta. Predictably, the hot noodles immediately caught the wind and took flight. 10 seconds later, the kitchen looked like a terrifying carb tornado, and the family literally had to peel their dinner off the refrigerator. 45. Using psychological terror to break a kid's bad habit is a deeply unhinged strategy that will definitely backfire. To stop his son from constantly sucking his thumb, a dad fabricated a horrifying urban legend about a boy whose wet thumb simply rotted, fell off, and was immediately stolen by aggressive backyard squirrels. The story was extremely effective. That night, the father peeked into the bedroom and found his terrified son fast asleep, with both of his hands shoved aggressively deep inside his pajama pants, desperate to protect his digits from the dreaded nocturnal thumb squirrels. 46. Treating an empty inflatable pool like a giant rubber prison cell for toddlers seems like a brilliant life hack until you walk away. A New Jersey dad placed his highly mobile twins into a dry kiddie pool in the living room, confident they were contained. He casually walked to the kitchen for a cup of coffee. When he returned 5 minutes later, the containment strategy had completely failed. The twins had discovered a rogue permanent black marker and spent the time giving each other matching, highly aggressive, full-body tribal tattoos. They looked like tiny, heavily inked prison inmates. 47. Trusting a 10-year-old boy to manage his own luggage is a catastrophic lapse in parental judgment. Rushing to leave for a tropical family vacation, a frantic mom yelled at her son to quickly pack everything he needed for the beach. He confidently zipped up his bag and gave a thumbs up. It wasn't until they were sitting in the hotel room 1,000 miles away that she opened his suitcase. This absolute genius had packed exactly 3 wireless video game controllers, a crushed bag of spicy potato chips, and one single, solitary white sock. 48. Board game victories should never, ever be confused with actual, real-world financial security. A mom from Oregon was absolutely mortified when the elementary school cafeteria called her cell phone. Her sweet little daughter had aggressively tried to purchase a hot lunch using a handful of brightly colored Monopoly money. When the lunch lady confiscated the fake cash, the daughter burst into tears. She desperately explained that her father had won all that paper in a very serious real estate deal last night, and he explicitly promised her it was valid currency for a grilled cheese sandwich. 49. Throwing out generic, macho motivational quotes to a toddler will always be used against you in a court of law. A father wanted to instill discipline, so he sternly told his son that a real man always finishes what he starts. A few hours later, the dad was begging the kid to get out of a freezing, soapy bathtub. The boy flat out refused. Looking his father dead in the eye, the kid declared he was legally obligated to stay in the tub until he finished drinking every last drop of the dirty bathwater. He completely weaponized the advice. 50. Watching a middle-aged adult attempt to seamlessly drop modern internet slang into a serious conversation is physically painful to witness. A dad in Virginia heard his son constantly describe cool things as being fire and decided to add it to his own professional vocabulary. Fast forward to a parent-teacher conference. After silently reviewing his daughter's flawless, straight-A grades, this grown man looked the exhausted teacher directly in the eyes, nodded slowly, and proudly declared that the report card was absolutely fire, fam. The sheer, suffocating silence that filled that classroom could have easily shattered bulletproof glass. So, which one of these catastrophic guardians deserves to have their parental license permanently revoked? Drop down in the comments and expose the absolute dumbest thing your own parents did to you. Don't hold back, ruin their reputation. While you're at it, hit that like button and subscribe before you accidentally turn your kid into a glowing orange beacon.